So I'm calling this movie, I'm coining it suburban folk horror. That's kind of how I'm feeling.
Interesting.
I would love to ask about the way you approach films, because I feel like with Barbarian and now Weapons, there is an element of this idea of kind of telling different little scary stories that seem to all be focused on America, is like in this kind of dark underworld of what we expect. Could you talk a little bit about what draws you to these stories?
I mean, I don't know. I just kind of write what's on my mind, and I want to just write what would be my favorite movie. You know, that's kind of my job, is to make my favorite movie, right? So I really am into like kind of pulling the rug up and looking at the underbelly of people's private lives, of society in general. You know, what makes us kind of flawed, unique people is like, you know, that's the goods. I'm interested, though, in why you would say folk horror, because to me, folk horror usually implies an other, right? Wicker Man, it's the journey to a distant, secluded community, you know, where you have to kind of, it's an outsider's journey in, and I don't think that
this is an
applies.
insider's. This is someone from the outside coming in.
Who?
But,
Oh.
I'm trying to help.
You're trying
I
to
don't
help
want to
me.
get you in trouble, man.
Yeah.
But no, I just think that there are elements of, you know, fairy tales and kind of folk
Okay,
horror.
now I see what you're saying. That's fair. Yeah.
You talk about wanting to make your own favorite movies. There's so many just on the surface, if you watch the trailer, spooky homes, spooky kids. What kind of movies did you love that inspired this?
Prisoners is up there. That's a big one, right? You can kind of feel that in there. Picnic at Hanging Rock is definitely like one. Yeah, classic. Magnolia is all over this movie. That's like, you know, I think that was like kind of the big touchstone. Hereditary, things like that. Yeah.
Do you feel like this is a movie that is going to inspire a lot of conversation around the meaning of the movie or what people take away from it? Or I feel like it played like a gangbusters, just great, fun horror. But there's definitely, yeah.
Okay.
And it played well in that room. So what do you feel like this is going to inspire?
I don't know. That's not really my business. You know what I mean? I kind of, whatever happens to the people, the life of the people watching it is, my job is over now. So I don't know. I hope people talk about it, but I don't know. I hope people enjoy it. That's all I care about.
No, it played like gangbusters in that theater yesterday. It was such a good response.
It was fun, yeah.
Even though it's a pretty scary movie, but I feel like there was a lot of good laughs.
Yeah.
And everyone really enjoyed it.
It should be fun. You know, I don't want to make a horror movie that's a slog or joyless misery. I want it to be a roller coaster where you're kind of, even when you're scared, hopefully you're smiling. You know, that's the vibe.
We're talking about 17 kids in one classroom. I want to know what happened in that classroom. Why just her classroom? Why only her?
This is a movie, without spoilers, just from what we've seen in the trailer, where you lose a child, which is the worst possible thing for a parent. What was it like for you as a parent getting into that space and kind of working through this kind of nightmare scenario?
You stay away from that space as long as possible until you need it, because it's literally the horror of horrors for me. So, you know, I mean, just the idea of it, just thinking of it now is horrible, you know? But you get intrigued by certain things. The design of the script is so good. Then you meet the guy, and then the guy turns out to have depth, and it's not just cosmetic horror. We want to freak everybody out and this kind of thing. It's coming from a very much deeper place, his grief and every character being based on, you know, a reaction in that grief. And then I watched Barbarian, and I thought that was really interesting and different and unique and tonally like nothing I'd ever seen. I didn't know whether to laugh or to be scared of this and that. I'm like, man, this guy's onto something. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that comes across in Weapons too. We screened it last night, and it was a very lively crowd, even though there are some truly horrific moments. Those laughs get people too, and I think that's really important in horror. You mentioned like this is something that has a lot of depth. I think it's going to inspire a lot of conversation about what it's really about. Do you remember kind of the first time you saw a horror movie that felt like it had a really powerful allegory or something that made you think deeper than just, as you put it, that kind of cosmetic horror?
No, I don't. You know, I remember horror films like, I mean, really early on, The Blob. After that, I Spit on Your Grave, which was a real horror film. And then Friday the 13th, and then things like Hereditary, more. I think now we're getting into a thing. So it's more recent, like Get Out or Sinners or something like that has more of like a psychological or social like impact, at least, you know, in being able to kind of existentially talk about it or philosophically talk about it. Yeah. Whereas this, I think, has that. It's like you can treat it as cosmetically as you want, or you can get into the social aspects of it as much as you want.
Yeah, there's a lot of layers to unpack. Do you have a scene that you remember shooting that was like the most powerful scene for you, or that you're kind of going to remember as you move on after this movie?
No, there's a lot of scenes that I did. There was a scene with Julia early on that was disturbing to me. There was, I think, running after the kids, like constantly seeing what wasn't there, obsessing about stuff, which I don't like to think of myself as somebody who would do that. Like I imagine myself, but this guy was kind of, he was a little tightly wound, you know? So even looking at the monitor and playing the thing back and forward and obsessing about the thing that he had no control over, and he couldn't get his head around not having control over it. That's what was driving him insane. And then it became about actually wanting his kid back, as opposed to the act of wanting his kid back.
Oh, I love that. That's wonderful.
This is a true story that happened right here in my town. A lot of people die in a lot of really weird ways in this story, but you're not going to find it in the news.
Why do you guys think that stories that are about kind of what lies beneath our kind of normal America and normal local small town, why do you think those are so intriguing to people? I'll begin with you, Julia.
Me? There's something really scary when something's familiar, because then it feels like, oh my God, this can happen to me. And it's not so removed. So I think that's why.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all walking around with like depths of things going on inside of us that don't really have a place in the surface events of our lives. And so, you know, we all have our own shadow and feelings that then when we get to see something like this, or it's like an expression of these other sides of ourselves that we have to hide. And so I think that is just, every human being has some version of that, and so it's just like a great release.
Did you get that cathartic kind of feeling from it, putting this movie out there and bringing it to life?
I think with every movie that has emotional intensity to it, there is some catharsis. There's also some baggage that comes along, or you can upset yourself in certain ways. But I think there is a bit of a catharsis in getting to like get something out of yourself that has no place nor should it, in your day-to-day life.
Julia, speaking of like complicated characters, you have a fantastic kind of back catalogue of choosing really interesting roles. Could you talk a little bit how Weapons fits into that, and Miss Gandhi?
I think that the number one thing when you approach a character, and it could be super simple on the page, which was not the case for Weapons at all, you don't approach them like a character, because then it doesn't feel real, and people are complex. You know, emotions, the brain, the heart, everything. It's very complex. So I think once you approach, I don't even want to say character, once you approach that person and you really get to know that person inside and out, there's so many different colors that it gets revealed.
Yeah, I think Weapons is a really great movie for that too. There's kind of an expected version of what it is, and when those get kind of rolled back. But without going into that, because it is spoilers, something we do know about this movie that I think just from the trailer is there is a scary kid element to this movie. Do you guys remember the first movie that you saw with a scary kid that like really scared you?
I think The Shining, probably.
Ooh,
yeah.
That's a great call.
The twins
who aren't twins.
Really?
Yeah, one's like 2 years older. In real life. In the movie, they're twins. But
I don't want to say that's upsetting, but you learn something new every day.
I know.
Yeah, I love that. That was a wonderful little tease. Thank you for that cinematic trivia. Appreciate you guys.
Are you watching